You're listening to the YWAM Nashville podcast. My name's Cody.
My name's Michael, and we'll be your hosts for this season.
Alrighty, here we are again.
Episode 5.
'Tis indeed. We just got done salvaging Luke's car from a mud pit. We may have half destroyed his bumper, but that's okay. We got Michael Mack here again.
Woot. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
The man, the myth, the legend.
How you doing?
Doing great. Feeling a little tired. I was in the woods trailblazing.
Working hard.
We're working hard, blazing a trail down to the Red River that's at the backside of our campus. It's going to be exciting. I think we're going to have some amazing ministry opportunities out of. There's like probably 1,000 people that pass by our campus on the Red River on
Blair and
typical
party music.
Saturday.
Yeah.
So we always, being in Adams, Tennessee and not exactly in Nashville, Tennessee, it seems like we're in a bubble sometimes, and it's hard to find people to do ministry to on a just normal, regular basis where we have to go like really out of our way to find people to minister to.
Yeah.
But it's like we unearthed like this gem of ministry opportunity down by the river. So
It's going to be great. All right. How are you doing, Michael? Other Michael?
I'm doing well. Also kind of tired and out of it mentally, but it's all good. How are you, Cody?
I feel pretty good. Yeah. So, what you got for our up-and-coming news? I don't know.
Current events?
Yeah, that.
So current events / prayer / challenge time. That's what it's been. But so one thing is that Ravi Zacharias just died.
Oh.
Cancer. That's the thing. And one kind of, obviously we can be praying for them and their family and his ministry and friends and all the things. But one thing that struck me when I was reading an article about it was that he was like a hardcore skeptic at 17, like raised in a Christian home, hardcore skeptic at 17, then tried to commit suicide and then was hospitalized due to that suicide attempt, where a youth worker came and gave him a Bible and like told him about Jesus and told him some Bible verses, and he got like rocked by that, and then gave his life to Jesus and went to impact thousands, maybe millions of people. And so I was kind of just thinking about it and just thinking like, we're in a time where the suicide rate is pretty high, but in general life, let's be sharing the gospel, because you have this one instance of this worker who goes to a hospital room and gives a 17-year-old boy a Bible and tells him about Jesus. Like, he already had Christian parents, so I don't even know. It didn't give like detail on what he said, but I'm sure it wasn't like a super complicated message or anything, but gives him a Bible and just talks to him. And then like that guy goes on to impact how many people, and has like a crazy worldwide ministry and stuff. So just kind of, I felt the challenge myself of like, when I'm out in public, am I viewing people like, oh, what does the Lord want to do in that person's life? Like maybe I don't have a crazy worldwide ministry, but maybe like that guy would go and be the next like Billy Graham or something,
Yeah, I think we need to definitely be praying that we are stirred on a continual basis for the lost. I think that's something that our Christianity has really lost in this day, is like a burning passion that is in constant acknowledgement of the dire situation in the world, that our hearts, as every person we pass, is not like reaching out to them or desiring to reach out to them, kind of waiting on the Lord's prompting to do it. Not that we shouldn't just do it even if there's not a prompting, because the Lord has already spoken to us to go and to preach the gospel to every person. So
We had a few more things we wanted to talk about as far as current events. I just wanted to make you aware, if you're not already, you probably have been, but just like the general revival that has been sweeping through Brazil for the past however many years.
/ the world.
/ the world. But yeah, they had like these huge missions conferences things that how many, like thousands, tens of thousands of people.
140,000 people.
Wow.
This is the number I read.
Yeah.
For the Send in Brazil, they had 3 stadiums. There was 140,000 people that showed up. Yeah, in attendance. And then there was like hundreds of thousands of people online too. So
Yeah.
it's crazy.
I think people even got turned away.
Yeah, that's crazy.
At the stadiums.
And
Man.
the president of Brazil gave his life to the Lord there.
Yeah.
I don't know if he was physically there or...
I think so.
So yeah, that's what we want for America. And if you are evangelized by a Brazilian, do not be surprised.
Yeah.
Great people.
But yeah, so be praying for revival. It's happening in the world, and we want to see it here as well.
Did you have another point, Michael?
Yeah, so something cool I read and kind of touches on different things we've been saying in the kind of current event prayer challenge time in the beginning. I was reading this article about a lady that was healed of blindness. So she actually went blind when she was, I think, 18 or something in like 1950 something or another. And then her husband, who is a pastor, prayed for her in 1970 something or another. And she just like straight up got healed like in that moment.
Come on.
From like complete blindness. And it was crazy because, and the reason it came up was, so there's an organization called the Global Medical Research Institute that did a study recently, and they were basically like looking into this story and doing a bunch of research on it. And she has medical reports because she was from when she went blind, because she was like fully legally blind, so she had medical points to prove that. And then there were medical points, or then after her husband prayed for her, she had more medical tests done, and they noted the change that was super sudden, because it was like she had some crazy named, it's called, okay, so she had been diagnosed with incurable juvenile macular degeneration. She was like,
of course. I know exactly.
She was like, so it was just saying that she couldn't see anything at all. But anyways, it's cool because they have reports from that time / up through, because she was like going to school for blindness and stuff, for blind people. She was going to school for blind people. And yeah, so then they have reports for after, like her medical reports after she got healed. And so they were like, so this large medical institution is like, yeah, she got healed by prayer, and we're looking into the effects of prayer as like medical treatment for like incurable diseases and stuff.
Come on.
And it's crazy. But I wanted to read this thing she said because I thought it was really good. She said, what people need to understand is I was blind, totally blind, attended the school for the blind. I read Braille and walked with a white cane. The woman, oh yeah, okay. Never had I seen my husband or daughter's face. I was blind when my husband prayed for me. Then just like that, in a moment, after years of darkness, I could see perfectly. It was miraculous. My daughter's picture was on the dresser. I could see what my little girl and husband looked like. I could see the floor, the steps. Within seconds, my life had drastically changed, and I could see. And I was like, that's crazy. But we've been talking about like praying for people and healings and stuff. And so I just thought it was like a cool testimony / a challenge of like continue to be praying for people. Like, let's be bold and courageous and go after the things that Jesus promised.
In your face, cessationism.
Oh, man.
Too much.
No. Just wasn't expecting that as the response. Just thinking, I showed it at one of our gatherings once, maybe a year or so ago, where even those who were colorblind were given like glasses that would make them not colorblind anymore,
Hmm.
and just how like almost every one of them just immediately breaks down crying because
Yeah.
they've never seen color like
Wow.
the normal human sees color. And I can't imagine being full on like not being able to see to like being able to see, and just like
It's crazy.
the life-changing world. That'd be crazy. So I looked up Wikipedia's definition of evangelism just because I wanted to see what,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and it says, in Christianity, evangelism is the commitment to or act of publicly preaching, within parentheses, ministry, of the gospel with the intention to share the message and teachings of Jesus Christ.
Come
That's a
on.
good definition.
Yeah. Something I like think about with evangelism is like, and I don't have like, this is the thing, this is the way it is, but I often imagine like, or think about, is it really evangelism if we're not giving someone the opportunity to make a decision to step into something more than what they were already like in?
Yeah.
Is it, if we just say Jesus loves you to someone, or we pray for them to be blessed, is that evangelism, or is that encouragement? And that could be semantics, I don't know, but there's something about evangelism to me that like where you're going out with the intention to create an opportunity for someone to step into something new.
Hmm.
Hopefully death to life in a spiritual manner.
Yeah. And like Charles Finney, who's a big proponent of revival in the 1800s, he had a big emphasis on like the now decision. Like, you don't know what's going to happen to that person. You don't know what's going on in their life. And this might be the moment that they're like, yes, like I'm going to submit myself to the Lord. And they encounter the Father, but you don't know until you like go for it.
Right on. Well, this has been your rabbit trail on evangelism
Come on.
for the week. It's a good rabbit trail, though.
Hey. Now it's time for Dad Jokes with Cody.
Dad jokes with Cody.
We'll come up with a jingle eventually.
All right, you guys ready? I don't know.
So ready.
I
Don't
don't
look
think
ready.
I can ever be ready for this.
I
I've
don't
been
know.
ready all week.
Okay. Why did the Scarecrow get a promotion?
I don't know, Cody. Why?
Because he was outstanding in his field.
It's so good.
I mean, that one requires a little bit of thought. I had to like process it for like at least a second.
So this week we're going to talk about the Discipleship Training School.
Discipleship Training School.
Oh, yeah.
Meanwhile, Michael Mack's clattering his ice over there. Do you want to say it? Discipleship Training School in an epic voice?
Nope.
That's fine.
DTS, also known as the DTS, which on the podcast you've probably heard that acronym multiple times. So anytime you hear DTS, you can think of Discipleship Training School.
It's
True
true. We
that.
have a lot of acronyms.
We do.
Like what?
SOM, SOW,
SOMD.
YWAM,
Salt. We talked about the salt.
SBS, BCC.
What did I can think of anymore?
SCS,
We just start making them up.
XYZ,
ABCD.
LOL.
LOL.
See, we have lots of them.
Yep. These youngins, they use more acronyms than words.
So, Michael Mack, do you want to share the general layout of the Discipleship Training School?
I can give it a go. The Discipleship Training School is a 5 to 6 months. It can be longer than that, but I think generally it has to be 5 months. 12 weeks worth of like in the classroom. Sometimes we call it lecture phase, but that seems really boring title to me. So I think we should stir it up and give it a new name. But within that lecture phase, it's set up to where you have a week-long teaching in the classroom with a speaker who's probably coming from somewhere around the world to speak on a topic for a whole week. And the topics can be various, from learning about the Holy Spirit as a topic, the Father Heart of God, hearing God's voice,
Identity.
our identity in God, Jesus, missions,
Discipleship. Oddly
discipleship.
enough.
Yes. So it can have any of those topics, but usually a speaker speaks for about 3 hours a day. And that isn't just all speaking. That's like a lot of like classroom participation as well.
Yeah.
Ministry times. And it's usually these speakers that we're bringing in are amazing, outstanding speakers.
Very creative. Fairly often.
Yeah. And so it's not like sitting and listening to the most boring person in the world, you know, like in my mind, if I was told like this is going to look like you sitting down and listening to somebody talk for 3 hours straight every day, I'd be like, that doesn't sound that great. But it's some of the most enriching, life-giving moments in my life, probably, just to hear some people who are really engaged with God really speak from their hearts and their life experience about who God is, what he's like, and how we're supposed to engage with him. So also within the what is called the lecture phase, which is the first 12 weeks, it's called, well, the environment, we call it a live-learn environment. So everyone lives together and shares in community. And so, you know, there's things like taking care of the place that you're living in and cleaning up after yourself. We all eat together in a dining hall. There's, within that 12 weeks as well, you split up into smaller groups of usually same sex, like male. All the dudes go one way, all the ladies go another way, having a small group. And that small group can be split up into multiple different groups depending on how many students are in the school. And that's called small group. And that's I think one of the reasons at least, that there's the like large group learning environment and then a small group and then a one-on-one is that because different people process in different ways. And so some people process well in a large group classroom environment. Other people don't process well in that environment. So it's like, okay, here's a small group that you can process some things within. Well, some people don't feel comfortable in small groups. Some people are better one-on-one. So there's also a one-on-one that you get to have each week with one of the leaders within the Discipleship Training School. There's often, depending on the school, there can be multiple ministry times throughout the week, but at least once a week, there's a set aside, like we are going out to do ministry. And we try to switch it up and give people different flavors of like ministry. So one week we might go out and hit the streets and just walk up to people and start talking to them about Jesus. Another week we might go to a like food bank, and just help distribute food to people that are in need. And, those are both vastly different ministries, but important, and they can just give a well-rounded understanding of what ministry can look like. We also have community investments, which is just taking on a job on the campus and like working, kind of doing your part to serve the community.
Yeah.
Also within the first 12 weeks, we have corporate gatherings. And so our corporate gatherings we're doing corporate gatherings basically every day now, but Mondays we open up every week with worship, an hour of worship, just dedicating the week to the Lord and just kind of getting fueled and ready. I've learned that worship really can fuel you for just living. So then Tuesday morning we work on fundraising, because all of us are volunteer missionaries, so that's something that we have to emphasize if we want to keep going. Wednesday morning we have worship and intercession time, and those can kind of be intermingled or have a worship time and then stop and have intercession time. And that intercession time can be really about anything. And then Thursday mornings we've been having our Bible study. And then Friday mornings we have just straight up intercession. And that has been, in the last couple seasons, focused on unreached people groups. So people groups in the world that have very limited or no access to the gospel whatsoever. So just praying and interceding that God would break through, or that he would send missionaries there, including sending us. So every week we're like, Lord, if it's us, we will go, just say the word and we'll jump on planes and go.
I just was thinking as you were talking how much like we kind of just bring students into like what we're already doing here, like corporately, and then there's also like classroom time on top of that, but a lot of it's just generally like we're inviting you into what we already kind of do and have cultivated here.
Yeah, and just thinking about the classroom part of it, where there's 3 hours of class lecture, I just want to re-emphasize how important those 3 hours really are.
Yeah.
And for some reason, when I say it, it really does sound boring. Like when someone says lecture phase and 3 hours of lecture, that doesn't sound like, the most brilliant, life-changing moments of life. It sounds like a really boring thing. And so I want to re-emphasize just how exciting those moments are. And being a leader, I've been able to sit through those lecture phase hours as a student, and then I've been able to then lead or staff schools multiple, and every time I anticipate those lecture phase moments. It's just there's such life-giving and just food for the soul, and you really are being one of the reasons that we have one speaker speak for a whole week is because we really want that speaker to invest their life into people.
Yeah.
And it's not just you hear somebody speak and you're inspired by what they say in 1 hour. That these speakers that are coming in are people that we trust, that we know, that we love, that we know are setting good examples in life and are doing ministry. And so it's not just a informational, let me give you some information. There's an impartation of who they are and what they carry in life to us, so that we are incorporating, hopefully even the anointing that they carry. And we want them to invest that into us and into our students, so that when we are going to the lecture phase of things, to the outreach phase, that we're carrying the goods with us that have been imparted.
Yeah. It's seriously my favorite part of the school, I think, is just getting poured into from people who are just have grown so much and have experienced so much themselves,
Yeah, it's basically an amazing mentoring process.
Yeah, it's so good.
So maybe we should call it something not so boring.
Yeah.
That's a shout out to the DTS Center. Anybody that may be listening, maybe change the words lecture phase to mentoring awesome phase.
Yeah, there you go.
Mentoring awesome phase.
I love it so much.
Well, I think that pretty much sums up the phase.
Well, I want to say one more thing. I'll just keep saying it. There's so much life that happens outside of the classroom, outside of the designated ministry times of friendship building with your like classmates, schoolmates, with your friends. And it's some of the deepest relationships you could possibly form.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like one of the fun things as a leader that you get to see is like people crying when they're leaving. Oftentimes we have too many students in one school to send them all to one location. We don't want to bombard
On outreach.
a specific location with students, especially if it's an unreached people group or something like that. And so oftentimes we'll split up, the students into two different groups or 4 different groups depending. And to see those students get split up is like the saddest thing, because they were like, it's like they've become like everyone's become best friends, and it's just amazing. So that's something that is happening within the, what did we call it? Phase?
I don't know. We need like we need another acronym.
That's the L.
The GH
I remember awesome, isn't there?
MTHGIXQP.
Mentor awesome
stage.
Map.
The map phase. No, you can't say phase
just map.
again. The map. In the map, amazing relationships are built. It's inevitable.
True that.
I've gotten a few lifelong friends out of my DTS.
Same.
But that was a good segue into the previous statement was a good segue into the outreach phase, because I was talking about how like what's imparted in the map we take into outreach phase.
Yep.
The op.
The op. That makes sense, actually.
And so outreach is 8 weeks to, forever, I guess, but the minimal amount of time you can spend. So outreach phase, the op, is 8 weeks spent in a cross-cultural experience. So it doesn't necessarily have to be outside of the United States, as long as it's cross-cultural. But hey, we're made to go to the nations. We are youth with a mission.
Yeah.
So most often we'll be going somewhere across the world, somewhere overseas. And it could be anywhere, and that's also exciting. The way that we choose our ministry locations is literally every time we run a new school, we just sit down and ask the Lord, where do you want us to go this time? And so it could be anywhere in the world. The primary objective is evangelism. We've talked previously in our podcast about YWAM having 3 prongs. And so the first prong of the fishing spear is training, which is what you're doing in a discipleship training school, is training. And then the second prong is evangelism. The third prong is mercy ministries. And so that's basically what you're jumping into in outreach. Is there might be some element of training because you're being led still and you're still kind of a student feel. But you are on the mission field. You are a missionary. And so everything's set up to do evangelism and mercy ministry.
Yep. So can you tell us about the U of N and how accreditation works? Accreditation, yes.
Yeah. So all of the schools within YWAM and within YWAM Nashville are a part of also the University of the Nations. And the University of the Nations just recently received its accreditation. And so now every course that you take with YWAM is accredited, and you can get an accredited degree, associate's degrees, bachelor's degrees, and even master's degrees. within YWAM.
Wow.
And I think I don't know if they're working on doctorate programs or not. I don't think they've gotten that far yet. Maybe they have. So there's requirements within the lecture phase, the map phase, just the map. And then there's also requirements on outreach. And so I can't remember all the requirements, but you're required to worship, which I'm like, that's the best requirement ever. You're required to intercede and pray.
Yeah.
Best requirement ever.
It's like so many hours.
You're
for all these
required
things.
to, go and do evangelism. You're required to, I think, do some kind of community investment work, and you're required to meet together as a group to have team time. I don't remember all the specifics, but that's all a part of the outreach phase.
So will you tell us about kind of the financial aspect of DTS?
Yes. So the cost currently for the YWAM Nashville DTS Discipleship Training School is $3,590. So $3,600 if you add 10. So that's a number to keep in mind. And for the most part, we are desiring people to pay that upfront on arrival. We make special exceptions for people all the time, just understanding situations, but it's always more beneficial to get that out of the way. And so we recommend either working to, acquire that amount or doing fundraising up into that point. And so for me and my wife, when we were thinking about joining YWAM, that's something that we did is we just asked a couple of our churches that we had close community with to contribute and some individuals. And so we had the amount that we needed before we came, which was a really great benefit because a lot of times you can see people struggling to fundraise for that while trying to learn in the DTS. And it's just not a favorable environment because everyone is also fundraising for the outreach. And so a typical outreach cost anywhere between, we basically recommend $4,000 to $5,000 for fundraising and for outreach. And that covers your flight, plane ticket to wherever you're going in the world, plus the at least 8 weeks, 2 months of ground fees. So food, transportation, housing, ministry
ridiculous
cost,
fees from natives. You never know.
Don't wanna talk
taxi,
Extortion.
bribing,
toilet
paying
paper.
Toilet paper. It's true.
These are all real things.
Water.
Yes, water.
All the necessities.
Hi.
Which $4,000 to $5,000 for all of that is extremely inexpensive. And so we're not trying to stay in the best of places.
It's not a luxury vacation.
Yeah. And we're not trying to make it that way. We're honestly trying to be as much as we can with the people that we're going to minister to on outreach. We don't want to set ourselves above them in any way. We want to meet them in where they're at. And so living as they would live is a really important part of that.
Which may be a hostel, maybe a mud hut in the Amazon. You never know.
Yep.
He didn't say hostile. He said a hostel.
It is a type of hotel, usually for backpackers, in case you don't know.
So, yeah, that's the structure of the Discipleship Training School. I don't know if there's anything else. Then you normally come back for debrief.
Debrief.
For a week, a few days, kind of. You just process through different things that happen on outreach and different dynamics. And, as Michael Mack says, try to close that chapter before you start a next one. And then you have graduation after that. So,
Right on.
So, when did you do your DTS?
I did my DTS in the year 2008.
How old were you in 2008, Cody?
I was 10.
That's great.
Yeah, exciting times. I did a soccer DTS. So that's another thing is that a lot of different YWAM locations will run different emphasized DTSs, a DTS with a different emphasis. And so the one that I did was a soccer DTS. And so I was really interested in using soccer as a ministry tool to reach people. And so when we were praying about stepping into missions, that's what happened is my father-in-law called us and said, hey, YWAM Nashville is running a soccer DTS and thought you guys might be interested. And earlier that day, God had been speaking to me saying, I'm about to open a door for you. Walk through it. And so that night he called and said that, and I was like, this is it. This is our opportunity. We're doing this. It was super exciting, and that was supposed to be in the summer of 2008. And then we sold all of our stuff and we're ready to go. And then they called us 2 weeks before and we're like, actually, we're postponing it to the fall. So we awkwardly moved in with my in-laws and I went and got a job at Starbucks. That was interesting times.
There you go.
And Annie got a job at Opryland Hotel, which is like a famous hotel in Nashville. And we worked and earned a little bit of money, which was beneficial probably to us. Jumping into
bet it was.
DTS. And yeah. And so fall of 2008. And we had an amazing time in that. And then we went on outreach to Argentina.
Come on.
Which, man, Argentina had been on my heart like my whole life. Like, there was like the continent of Africa and Argentina for some reason.
That's like, oddly specific.
We're like two places. And for some reason, it started happening when I watched, I can't remember what year it was, World Cup. And I like chose Argentina. I was like, this is going to be my team. Other than the USA, because I knew the USA was not that good and was probably going to lose. So I was like, maybe this team will be good. And they ended up making it to the finals, I believe, and losing in the final. So it was a good pick. But anyways, that nation had been on my heart ever since I was a child. And so to get to hear that that's where we were going, I was like blown away. And then God did some amazing things on that outreach. So I don't know if I should go into those now or not.
Do it. Yeah, do it. It's the time.
This is the time.
The time and the place.
Man, outreach in Argentina. So many crazy little things and then some overarching large things. We started out in a place called, what was that place called? Probably doesn't matter. A smaller town outside of Buenos Aires called Ituzaingó. And we did soccer ministry. We went around and invited young kids in and did evangelism. We would gather crowds of people through soccer, and then after our soccer game was over, we would share the gospel. And I remember one opportunity to be able to share the gospel. They were like, Michael, you get to share this time. So super excited. And, sometimes when you're like sharing, you can just feel God's presence. And so that was happening. And I was like, I feel God's presence and I, know something's going to happen. And so I gave a gospel presentation and an opportunity to respond. And there was probably like 30 people there, young teenager-ish crowd, maybe a few adults, maybe a few younger kids. And this one, I think he was like 8-year-old boy, was the only one to raise his hand to receive the gospel. But he was like the most precious like kid. And like his boldness to raise his hand when no one else did just astounded me. And I still remember like this kid, this was how many years ago now? 10? 12 years ago. I can't count. Sorry. 12 years ago. And I still remember this kid's face and him raising his hand to receive the gospel. And you could see the crazy change. And then from him raising his hand to receive the gospel, it like just ignited a boldness in some of the other young people. And they like a few others raised their hand, and so that was awesome. From
Cool.
there, we went to Mendoza, Argentina, which is on the right below the Andes mountain range on the border of Chile. And one of our main ministries was to go into this neighborhood that was called La Basura, which means
The
trash. So you can imagine what kind of neighborhood it was. It was literally a trash dump that people had taken trash particles, objects, and created homes out of. And so we went and built a volleyball court because Argentine people are into volleyball and soccer. So built a volleyball court. They already had a little soccer field. We cleaned it up and would invite them to come and play and do, like, a lot of times on DTS outreaches, you'll do what is called an open air something.
Preaching?
Open air presentation, where oftentimes you'll have some different dramas to present because you're most likely going to a nation where you don't speak their language, at least fluently. And so the gospel through drama translates without language.
Yeah.
And so music, we usually play a few songs and then give some testimonies that have translation with them, and then a gospel message. And it's proven to be an amazing method to really touch people, to see it, to hear testimonies, and to hear a real message, and to be given a opportunity to respond. So that was amazing. And the people that were hosting us were like, do not go into this neighborhood. They will kill you. But, like, we had a burning passion. You know, anytime somebody says don't do something, it automatically, like, creates in you a desire to do something, especially if it's for a righteous cause. And so we were like, please let us go into this neighborhood. And eventually, like, I think it was close to the last day, they were like, okay, you can go in. And so we went in, and it was a little scary. People were like looking at us like we were crazy, and we saw some people like kind of like coming at us a couple times. We weren't sure what their intentions were, but we made it to this one like high point, and we got up on this high point, and I remember we just worshiped like maniacs. And then we came down and we just began to meet the people, and we got to share, and there was really just kind of a revival there, just a great response. And just I can't remember how many people ended up giving their lives to the Lord, but what really astounded me was years later I found out that we were the first to ever go into that community, but every outreach team after us has now been going into the community, and they've seen amazing fruit from it, and and they've continued the volleyball and soccer ministry there. And so I'm just like, yeah, we got to be a part of that. Another crazy testimony is we got to go to a prison. And again, it was like my turn to preach the gospel. And so I was like, man, what do you preach to like people that are in prison? But God gave me this message. I can't remember some of it, but the gist of it was that they could have more freedom within that prison than millions of people outside the prison could have if they had Jesus in their heart.
Yeah.
Like giving them the freedom that is true freedom. And I think I preached about the life of David and the life of Peter, and how dumb and mistake driven they were at times, but how God was like, this is the perfect people I want to use. And just that's their, you know, and I was like, who? I don't remember if I actually had them raise their hands. I was like who's murdered and like who's committed adultery in here, you know, like, and probably that's, you know, as bad as some of them got, you know, in their prison sentences. But that's what David, you know, was guilty of, and David was a man after God's own heart. So preached this message, and it was so cool. Like, as I was preaching, it was like the people, the guys, it was a men's prison. They were like on the edges of their seats, like leaning in to the words that I was speaking. And I, again, just felt the presence of God. And we gave an altar call, and I think it was like 30 people, 30 guys, like gave their lives to Jesus, which is awesome. But what
Wow.
came after that was the most amazing part. We had somebody suggested that we do a fire tunnel. And so if anybody doesn't know what a fire tunnel is, a lot of people don't, is where all of our group lined up. There was probably like 15 of us. We made a line, and then all of the prisoners came through we were facing each other, creating a tunnel with our arms, and they came through the tunnel of arms, and we laid hands and prayed for them. I mean, I don't know how many people were in this prison, but probably at least like 300.
Yeah.
Maybe more. I can't really remember that well, and I didn't count. But there was no air conditioning, and it was this summertime there. And so imagine no air conditioning in an enclosed building full of around 300 people or more. Like I said, it didn't count. And close quarters, we're praying for them. And I don't know if you've ever prayed for 300 people in a row, but it is a little bit tiring. And so, but like the end of the line is coming through, and I'm like so tired. Like when they first started coming through, I'm like, yeah, fire, yeah, Jesus, get them, whoa. By the end, I'm like, yes, Lord, touch this man, like, and but I think it was like maybe even the last guy coming through. All of a sudden, he just erupts into speaking in tongues, and then he starts shouting, and then the whole prison erupts with worship and praise and tongues and shouting and dancing and chanting, like for what felt like an hour or so, but it was probably more like 15 minutes. But like in the midst of it, like this excitement for Jesus, I'd never experienced anything like this before. And so it was just like, and when Argentine people like get excited, like if you've ever seen an Argentine soccer game, I mean, the people are just going crazy. They're like throwing their hands in the air and they're chanting. They're like, and so that's what they were doing, except for unto the Lord. They were chanting, dancing, jumping up and down, shouting. And it was like, what is going on here? And so quite the experience of revival in prison.
Yeah.
I could go on with some stories. Maybe just one more.
Yeah.
Okay.
We went back to Buenos Aires, and we got to stay in a property that YWAM Buenos Aires, Argentina had bought that was across from one of the main government buildings. And every day we weren't sure what like we were supposed to be doing. We didn't have like a great plan other than like going out and doing evangelism. But in the city of Buenos Aires at the time, like you would walk out to the street, and every block someone would hand you a piece of paper with a picture of a nude woman on it and a phone number and an address. And so, and there was hundreds of papers like that scattered on the streets that you're walking over, because, a lot of people are taking this piece of paper and just throwing it as soon as they get it. There's pictures plastered on walls. There's like news stands that are selling pornographic magazines. And so basically everywhere that you would look, you would see nude women. That was super challenging for probably everybody, but especially the males in our group. And so we were just like, it's just like this super sex nudity like infused environment.
Yeah.
And so like I would just feel shame and just disgust every time I got home from like any kind of like going outside of our room. And so we, in our times of intercession that we had one morning, I felt God give us like a plan, and it was to write purity in Spanish, which is the language they speak there, or castellano, and to write pureza, purity, on bandanas and put them over our eyes, and have the females lead us through the streets, and to go to like different sites that would be like main attractions, tourist attractions, and to stand and pray and intercede and read Psalm 119 as we stood around those places, which is a really long psalm, but like basically in protest for what we saw. So every day we would go out and do that, be led around with purity written over our eyes, and stand around these buildings or like special sites and just begin to pray and intercede. And everywhere we went, we were kicked out. We went to sex shops and did it, and we got kicked out by the police every time. So the police would come like, you can't do this, get out of here, what are you doing? And then, but we would just go to a different location. And so the last day that we were there, we were standing around some monument and praying, and we had a guy from a newspaper come and interview us. I didn't speak Spanish, but they interviewed one of the leaders that was with us, our translators, and we're like, what are you guys doing? And so they interviewed us. A radio station came and interviewed us. A TV station came and interviewed us. And I mean, we would get all kinds of remarks. Like, some people would come up to us like super angry at us for what we were doing, and some of people would come up to us and praise us for what we were doing. And it was just a very odd thing, but we were basically interceding for the abolishment of sex slavery in the nation. And so the last day, the last person to come up to us handed us a card, and it said, like, I can't remember exact words, but it was like jefe of the government, like boss of the government. It was like, he handed us this card, and he was like, no one has any right to tell you that you have to leave. No police officer, no one. So you now have my permission to like stand in opposition to this as anywhere you want, as much as you want.
Wow.
And he was like, this is the permission you need.
Come on, Jesus.
And so it was really cool, but it just happened to be the last day that we were there. So we were like,
man.
dang, why couldn't this have happened before?
Yeah.
But I mean, so we get back from our DTS not thinking much of what we had done in those times, because it was just intercession, like we didn't see any like necessarily breakthrough moments of what we were praying for happening. Yeah. But then one of our DTS classmates sent us an article, that like a website article that said, new president blah 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 has banned all what is it called, solicitation of sex trafficking.
Come on.
And so we were just like, our prayers did matter, our intercession did have an effect. And so it was like, little group of 15, like YWAM kids, just like, we felt like that it was, obviously God, but like he used us to really shift something in an entire nation, and in sex slavery, at least the solicitation of it. So those are just a few stories. I could go like on and on of what God did through our DTS outreach.
It's so good.
That's awesome.
So
I've never heard that story before. Thanks for sharing. That's awesome.
So in kind of overall, and this might be the last thing, because obviously we could all share about all the things, but overall, what was like for you personally, your takeaway from the DTS? Like, if you had to be like, God did this in my heart.
That one's easy for me. God taught me humility. Like, and I think that's something that YWAM really carries, is just this emphasis on humility, that it's God that's doing the stuff, not you. Like, he will definitely use you, but because I had been a part of basically the charismatic church stream, since I had gotten saved as a teenager, but I had not ever seen like a true like humble walk of humility with the Lord. It was more of like, this guy is a great minister and he can do miracles, and there wasn't the true like humility. And so I don't know how to go further into that other than to say that that's what I took away from it. If anything, it was like how to be a humble lover of Jesus.
It's so good.
It's good stuff. It's really easy making these podcasts. I feel like we've got great stories and people around here, and we're just mining for gold in a rich field,
Yeah, it's so good. Thank you for sharing all the things with us.
Faux show.
Most deaf. My breath.
So do we want to, let's move into base happenings.
Remarks. So things are picking back up around here. We've got a DTS coming up this fall that you can come be a part of. You can email us for any information at info@ywamnashville.org. But we'll send you an application if you email us, or you can go on our website, I think, which is just ywamnashville.org. But anyways, so come be a part of that. That's September 20th. Or if you're more of a spring kind of person, we're having one this spring as well. Breaking news.
Yep.
So
start date is March 28th.
Yep. And Michael here, yours truly, is going to be the DTS leader for the spring DTS.
And my wife.
Yeah, and his wife.
She gets thrown under the bus as well.
But you haven't met her yet. You probably will.
You will
Eventually. Don't worry.
It'll happen. We'll rope her in.
We'll
Still
drag her in
haven't
here.
met her yet.
Yeah. All right. So that's two things that are happening. Those are probably our biggest things. But we're also, like Michael Mack said earlier, they're cutting a path down to the river.
True that.
Those old trailblazers, making prophetic pathways through the wilderness.
Come on.
Yeah. We're starting a garden out here. Luke's working on that. He's spearheading that operation.
Yep. That's Luke from the, I guess, 2 episodes ago at this point. And that's kind of for like a community-based kind of thing. So we're looking forward to that. Have some fresh veggies.
All organic.
Super organic.
YWAM Memphis is having an evangelism thing this June.
The first week of June.
The first week of June. And it's changed a little bit since I originally signed up for it, but it's going to be like evangelism and like praying for people and just like really going after it and hitting the streets. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, we felt like God saying for us to be on the cutting edge. And, just coming out of this whole COVID-19 like scare and isolation and, pandemic, it's been our prayer that this would be the harvest, that people would be ready to hear because of what they've come through, and that this could potentially be this next great awakening.
Come on.
Yeah. I should probably note YWAM Memphis is still in its pioneering stages, and we work very closely with them. They're our extended family.
Yep.
So basically anytime they do anything, they're like, you guys want to come? And a good percentage of us are like,
bring it on.
Give me a date.
Yeah, they're really a ministry outlet for us.
Yeah.
And they're actually still a part of YWAM Nashville, but they're YWAM Nashville ministering in Memphis, Tennessee. So
yeah.
Well, you learn something new.
But they are YWAM Memphis as well. So it's kind of a weird dynamic, but just roll with it.
There's like a few micro YWAM bases out there that are like,
it's like they're not super fully established as their own yet. So
And so that kind of concludes what's going on here with us.
Awesome stuff. If you want to support the base in any way, if you want to support Michael Mack and his family, if you want to support the podcast or literally anything we're doing around here, it's all fundraised for and is from the donations of people who believe in the mission and feel a call from the Lord to give. And so if you have any questions on how to give or a desire to give, just hit us up at our podcast at YWAMNashville.org email, and we can connect you with the right people and make it happen. So,
yeah.
All right.
You could come visit too. So
yeah.
Feel free to come check us out.
Yeah, feel free to come visit. You could stay a couple days or pop in, and we can give you a base tour and meet you and pray for you, and you can jump into life. Like Michael Mack was saying earlier, we'd do some corporate things. So Monday morning worship at 8:30, we typically is open.
In the a.m.
In the a.m. 8:30 a.m. Also Wednesday worship and intercession same time, and then Friday intercession same time are pretty much open for people to come be a part of.
Also, we're about to start. We're 10 days from Pentecost, starting Thursday. And so I guess this will be out in a couple weeks, but we're going to be just doing an extended gathering. The Lord had been speaking to me about just like bringing everybody together coming out of this whole pandemic, especially our core group staff here. And also he just kept saying the word Terry, Tarrry, I believe is how it's spelled.
Yeah.
And so he was like saying to me, where are the terriers? Again, with a Tarriers, not like the dog terriers or anything. And then he spoke to me and said, will you just tarry with me for another moment? And that comes from the scripture where Jesus is in the Garden of Gethsemane, I believe, and he asks I think it's Peter and John, if they will just tarry with him another moment in prayer, and they fall asleep, and he comes back and he's like, Bruhs, what are you doing sleeping? Like, I'm sweating blood. Could you just stay awake for another moment and pray with me? And they fall asleep again, I think. But that was like what got emphasized was like, will you just tarry with me and pray just a little bit longer? Just be together a little bit longer. And when he before he ascended, he told them to tarry in the upper room. Well, he just told them to tarry. I guess they chose the upper room in Jerusalem and wait till they were filled with the Spirit to go out and to do ministry, endued with power. And so we're going to spend the next 10 or so days waiting, tarrying. The Terriers, we shall be called. We'll go down in history as the Terriers.
Bring it on.
So that's something that we're jumping into, that these guys may not have known those details. We just discussed it yesterday in our leadership team meeting. And I kind of announced it Monday morning, but with unknown like practicals, which there's still no practicals to it. It's just we're going to do our main Monday morning meeting or Thursday morning meeting and then just continue to meet and see what Jesus does, which I'm hoping is worship and repentance and glory.
That sums up our main topic discussion.
No, it doesn't. I want to talk more.
Well, you'll get an opportunity to, because I've got some fun questions for you.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, boy, I bet you didn't see that coming.
No,
get ready.
Prepared.
Get ready.
Uh-oh. I was joking.
What is the most embarrassing story you had from an outreach?
Oh, man. By far, one of the most embarrassing moments was in the mountains of North Africa. And I had gone with a small shovel and some toilet paper to find a secret spot. And I thought I had found my secret spot to dig a hole and to get rid of some wastes. And as I'm squatting into this hole to get rid of some wastes, all of a sudden, like a large group, maybe like 10, like 13-year-old girls surround me and are like 5 feet or less. And they're just staring at me, watching me.
Wow.
I'm pooping.
Oh my
And they're
goodness.
staring and giggling and watching and like, you know, like nudging each other and like whispering to each other's ears. And I'm like, you're like 3 feet away from me. Like, what are you doing? And I'm like waving my arm, like, go away, please. Like, this is weird. Like, this should be weird for you. It's really weird for me. Well, that's probably definitely the most embarrassing moment. Probably definitely. But okay, so and then they never left. They like I wiped and they watched me wipe. I'm like, that's so weird. Like, stop it.
Oh man.
But I just had to bear the shame of the moment and just like walk on.
Like, and about your
Yeah.
business.
Number 2. What was your biggest screw up in the kitchen?
Like, in general?
Yeah, like
Any kitchen, anywhere, at any
like
point in your life.
you were cooking and it was an utter disaster.
Well,
Michael Mack's really good at cooking,
Or
so.
you lit something on fire. Basically, whatever.
what came to my mind was I have no idea what I was chopping. This was when I was a little bit younger, like a kid. I was chopping something with a large knife, and I sat it down, the knife and whatever I was chopping, and then I dropped something on the knife, which was like slightly hanging off the edge, and it did a flip and then like speared into my leg.
Oh,
And it was like waving back and forth, like,
oh man.
Like, dung.
and then I walked into the living room with the knife still in my leg,
Oh,
and I was like, Dad.
God.
And he was like, that's funny. And he started laughing. And that was the end of the conversation. I
Oh
walked
my
back into the kitchen, pulled the knife out of my leg, and grabbed something to like stop the blood. That's my memory.
That's really
You
funny.
didn't go to the
I don't remember
hospital?
what the question was.
It was the biggest screw up in the kitchen.
Yeah, that, I mean,
Yeah,
that,
so that
That's a
about
big
does
deal.
it.
probably
Yeah.
Did you
qualifies.
end up going to the hospital?
No, it
or-
actually wasn't that bad of a, like, I don't know how it, but I don't know if it wasn't that bad in my family's consideration or if it really wasn't that bad, but
Yeah.
it seemed to stop bleeding fairly quickly, and
And you lived,
yeah.
obviously.
Here you are. Well, thanks for joining us for this
Wait,
episode.
I have a question for you.
Oh,
I have to think of
a
something.
challenge.
Real quick. What is your name?
Michael?
Cody?
What is your favorite color?
Yellow? Oh, wait.
Ah!
It's green.
Okay, that's my last question.
Fair enough. Well, then, thank you for joining us. Make sure nobody else
Yeah.
has anything. Thanks for joining us for this episode.
Yeah.
Episode number 5.
Thank you to Michael Mack. Thank you to the listeners.
Thanks for having me, guys. It was
Yes.
You bet. It was
fun again.
Yes. Hasta la
Luego.
bye.
Pasta.
Hasta la
Dude.
pasta.
I'm just excited to hear the ending music.
I know. It should be starting right about now.
Probably fade out with us talking and that music.